So we're going over Paul's missionary journey. We're going to be mostly in Acts chapter 15, but in the latter half, so the first like 5 verses, we're going to talk about conflict and conflict resolution, which is the worst thing. It's the worst thing. It's not my thing. I'm good at the first part. I'm really good at conflict. The resolution part of me, we don't really go hand in hand. So we'll be talking about that. And yeah, I'm still married after 10 years, which I'm really surprised, but that's more of a compliment to my wife than anything I got. Yeah, again, resolution, not my thing. People always talk about your spiritual gifts. Encouragement was not one. Every time my wife was like, "You're not a good encourager," I'm like, "I know." So they're probably making out for that though. So, all that said, we're going to start with a question. And it says, consider a relationship problem you have gone through or are going through. What healed or can heal that relationship? And then what is a key factor in restoring relationships overall? So I figured let's take the personal out of it and we'll just say, what is a key factor in restoring relationships? That's easy. That's a concept. We can talk concepts.
Communication.
Communication. That's what I wrote down as number 1 because that's what I remember from premarital counseling. Yeah. And that's still my worst stuff. Communication. Jeff Foxworthy always has this, he always has this comedy routine way back in the day, which was, he goes, whenever my wife would come up to saying we need to talk, I'd make the mistake of talking.
That sounds like it.
So now he says when we need to talk, he goes, baby, I'm sorry, I don't know what I did or may not do, but I would like to be excused from my room to think about it for a while.
Figure out what I did.
Yeah. So communication. Let's talk a little bit about communication. What is important about communication? I always talk about what are the 2 number of things? I don't know. We probably all went to different classes.
I'd say understanding the other person's side. Okay,
so empathy or sympathy. Is there a lack of empathy in today's world?
Yes, everybody else will think exactly like they do.
Mm-hmm. We have these bubbles, right?
Mm-hmm. And we stay in our bubbles.
Mm-hmm. Lubbock is an amazing bubble.
Yeah, it's one city that's a whole bubble.
It is. It really is. They talk about, like, even cotton farming is a bubble. Like, my farming background is corn and rice. That's all my good friends are rice farmers. And so when I first moved back, not knowing anything about cotton farming, they're like, oh, they're talking about their harvest. And I'm like, oh, how's second harvest going? And they just looked at me like I was a crazy person.
Yeah.
Because rice has 2 harvests in a year.
Not cotton.
Yeah, and no, not cotton. Like today we were driving down, I'm like, oh, there it is. It's really nice. And of course, one of my friends is a cotton farmer, and she's talking about how terrible it is this year. I'm like, I don't know. Yeah, Lubbock is an amazing bubble. I think HEB is bursting that bubble, so that'll be good.
Yeah.
That's the grocery store bubble is now being burst. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
We're about to become a basketball school, I think. Right? Tech is now a basketball school. Got to be good at something.
Yeah. Well, we'll see.
We'll see. Hey, once every few years is good.
Yeah.
But and then LCU doesn't even have a football team, which is when I went to Encounter, but back in the day, I made fun of them a lot.
They still don't.
No.
I think they tried one time.
Did they?
They just.
I remember my friends going to ACU, I like to make fun of LCU people, even though I go to LCU right now for my master's for some post-grad. And I always make fun of them because they don't have a football team and they used to wear shirts that says undefeated since like 1945 or something like that.
Yeah.
It was really funny. But anyways, so bubbles, so communication bubbles. I think communication, they always say, what percentage is nonverbal? Do you guys remember? This is always talked about, especially with preachers. They always talk about verbal versus nonverbal. I think it's like 90% of all communication is nonverbal, which is what has really hurt, going virtual. It's like, yeah, you can see my face, but you don't see any of the other mannerisms. You don't. There's a lot of nonverbal tics and stuff like that you're not going to see, especially if I keep my hands down here.
I mean, if everybody's walking around in masks, you can't.
Yeah. Exactly.
Get all those verbal cues either.
So, nonverbal communication is very important. When you do job interviews, they teach you to like lean towards the interviewer. It looks like you're being interested. Same thing. So, nonverbal communication. Any other key factors in restoring a relationship? We've got communication, which is not just restoring, but keeping that relationship. Any other ones? Empathy, I think, would be almost to a tangent or a side would be another one, I think. I had written down intent. Is intent important, right? You have to, keeping a relationship is hard. You have to intend to keep that relationship, right? Relationships don't just exist. Unless you're me and my best friend Donald, which we talk maybe he lives in Amarillo. We talk maybe once a year, and it's still like the day we met. It's awesome. So you have to have an intent on keeping those relationships, or especially in restoring those relationships, it requires intent. So we're going to get into that a little bit. First, we'll hit the Jesus side. So we're going to be in Matthew chapter 5, and then verse 21 through 24. And we'll see what Jesus has to say about this, because it's always good to connect to the original, right? The red letter. Red letters are important. It says, "You have heard that it was said to those of old, 'You shall not murder, and whoever murders will be liable to judgment.' But I say to you that everyone who is angry with his brother will be liable to judgment. Whoever insults his brother will be liable to the council, and whoever says 'you fool' will be liable to the hell of fire." Or the fire of hell is how I've always read it. So if you are offering your gift at the altar, and there remember that your brother has something against you, leave your gift there before the altar and go. First be reconciled to your brother, and then come and offer your gift. All right, so first question is brother a little brother, or what are we talking about when we say brother?
Basically everybody.
Basically everybody. I think that's one thing we have a really hard time realizing, and especially in the social media and where we live today, that your brother or your neighbor is basically everybody. Christianity is not a self-based religion. It is you're judged on how you treat other people, not how you feel about yourself. I think Buddhism is very, central, like your spiritual thing. Christianity is very much a what are you doing for other people, not what has been done for you. So, brother is everybody, and Jesus says, "Leave your offering." When he talks about it, he says, "Leave your offering." So, offering's kind of important back then, right? So, what is he saying about relationship with your neighbor, or what is he saying with your relationship with anybody at this point in relationship to offering, or is it integral to your spiritual walk, this relationship with your brother?
You have a clear heart and clear conscience before you're.
I think it's more important than your offering.
Is it? Okay.
I mean, if he says, "Leave your offering,"
Yeah.
I mean, walk away from it and worry about your brother.
Mm-hmm. I think to God, relationship with your fellow man or even your fellow Christian is more important than what you're offering to God, right? So if your heart's not right, does it matter? I think we also there's a lot of precedents set in the Old Testament where offerings were what was it? I think Cain and Abel, I think, is a great example, right? His offering wasn't as acceptable to the Lord because why? Because he was holding a grudge, right? I don't think it was because God didn't like fruit. I think it was purely because he was holding a grudge at the time. So anyways, so Paul has some relationship problems, and we're going to Dr. Phil Paul, all right? So we're going to talk about that. And so in Acts chapter 15 and verse 36 to 41, and we're going to see where Paul actually has some relationship problems. And we're going to put him on the couch, and we're going to be Oprah. So sometime later, Paul said to Barnabas, "Let us go back and visit the believers in all the towns where we preach the word of the Lord, and see how they are doing." So again, we're going to go do another. Paul would like to go revisit those towns that we just talked about. and see how they're doing. Barnabas wanted to take John, also called Mark, with him. But Paul did not think it wise to take him because he had deserted them in Pamphylia and had not continued with them in the work. They had such a sharp disagreement that they parted company. Barnabas took Mark and sailed for Cyprus, but Paul chose Silas and left, commended by the believers to the grace of the Lord. He went through Syria and Cilicia, I think it is, strengthening the churches. All right, so first we got to talk about this disagreement. It's not really, it's in Acts chapter 13, verse 13. It doesn't really, I'll read it because it's just one verse. And it's almost like a little sidebar. Again, I wish we had more footnotes. From Pamphylia, and this talks about, from Pamphylia, Paul and his companions sailed to Perga in Pamphylia, where John left them to return to Jerusalem, and that's literally all we get about it. So something that causes Paul and Barnabas to break up, we get a verse for it, and it's a side note. So there's a lot of conjecture out there. There's a lot of, well, did he get homesick? Did something else? Was he scared? Did the Spirit, like, what was going on? What caused it? We don't know, unfortunately. But what do you think? We'll put ourselves in Paul's place. You're standing there with Paul. You've had this guy. Barnabas wants to take this other guy who's deserted you. What's going through your brain? Why do you not feel like taking this guy? What could be some of the reasons?
Because he didn't stick with it last time.
Yeah, we talked about this last week. What happened in those places where he was deserted? He was beat. He was left for dead. So, I think for me, it's almost like it's like that you didn't have my back at this point. How can I expect you to have my back going forward, right? Like you weren't there when I was stoned to death.
You deserted me when I needed you.
Yeah. Yeah, so to me, is Paul justified in his feelings?
Well, I can see his point.
Yeah.
I mean, you had to be there to know.
I think Paul is justified in how he feels because it doesn't say then the Spirit came to Paul and said, no, you're doing it wrong. I think at this point we have a very active, not saying he's not active now, but we have like almost with Peter and the sheep coming down. We have a very, if Jesus or God doesn't like the way you're thinking, he's going to come correct you he corrected Paul very distinctly on the road to Damascus.
I think I feel kind of like Paul did.
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean, you get thinking about it, just because you get beat don't mean you want your friend to get beat, you know?
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Maybe there's some of that. Maybe it's just
Not everybody gets along,
true.
especially if generally it's people that are the same personality that don't get along with each other.
That is definitely true. I've met people a lot like me that I can't stand. In fact, I've had friends like, you guys are basically the same person. Why don't you like each other? I was like, because we're basically like, I don't like him. I'm sorry. So let's talk about who was wrong in the disagreement. We have Barnabas and we have Paul. Let's say somebody's got to be wrong. Who's wrong?
Nobody's wrong.
I just said somebody's got to be wrong. Who's wrong?
Nobody's wrong.
Nobody's wrong? Why?
Because he had a point, but they needed to have somebody with them too, so, and there was a solution.
Okay.
They didn't need him. They had two people, they could just split up.
Okay. So let's look at what we know. All right. What do we know about Barnabas and Paul?
They spent a lot of time together.
Yeah. Who are they as people? How would you describe them? Barnabas we know is what? Because his name means what? You know what Barnabas means? It's son of encouragement. I'm sorry. That's when I say I'm not a good encourager, that's because I hear a lot about Barnabas being the son of encouragement. Barnabas was a great encourager, so he's very much probably into this. And so Barnabas, we know Barnabas was a great encourager. Would we say Paul was a great encourager? I kind of would say. You don't think so?
He was a scholar.
I don't know. To me,
I don't see him as being
I don't know, to get people to come to Christ like he did, I have to assume some of what he could do was encouraging. Were they passionate? Would you say both men were passionate?
Yes.
Okay. What were they passionate about? Big bird? Christ? Exactly. They were both passionate about Christ. They were both passionate about living out their gifts. They weren't the man who buried the talent. Right? We always have this parable of the man burying the talent and coming back and saying, well, at least I didn't leave.
Yeah.
To me, as an accountant, I was like, that doesn't seem that bad.
Well,
You can always quote Monty Python, you come in with nothing, you leave with nothing, what have you lost? Nothing. So they both loved God. They both were also, I think, passionate about the believers, including themselves, right? They understood about the brothers and who their brother was. So then let's talk about so we have this conflict, we have this split up. We always say everything works out to God's plan, right? To the good of those that love him. We always say I have two people that love him. What good came out of this? If good comes out of everything that happens and everything is working to God's plan, let's conjecture here. What are some things that happened that could be in line with God's plan, or some things that we would consider good, right? We have a relationship that didn't get, we'll hit the conclusion of it, but at this point we have no resolution, right? We just have the resolution is we're breaking off. We're breaking up. Our relationship status is it's complicated. So what are some of the good things that came out of this? They went to two places, which means more people.
Because if there'd been three, that'd been three, and they'd went to one place.
Right.
Paul's not gonna go by himself anymore.
Right. Paul found Silas, and we have a lot of good things about Silas throughout the New Testament. So God is using conflict, which we would consider bad. When people get so heated that they're just deciding that we're gonna break off this relationship, and you go do your thing, and I'm gonna go do mine. Right? There is no resolution. But God has used this conflict to further his kingdom, right? Now, I'm not saying that, that's saying, and we'll get to this in a second, but I'm not saying God is telling you to go break off. If you disagree with somebody, just don't ever even try to resolve with them and just trust God. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying God did and will use these things to the betterment. So we have two missions. So now we have a multiplication of believers, right? So now we're almost doubling, if not even more, the conversion of the faithful. So I think that's important to know, is that if both people are still have that zeal or that zealousness for God, that even in disagreements, if they keep God their goal, then things are going to work out. And as long as, that's the point of it all. Let's hit Ephesians. Let's talk about less than ideal conflict, right? Let's talk about anger, because anger is always good, because there's always anger in conflict. I don't know. I've never seen a non-angry conflict. Have you? Somebody's always got some anger, right? So let's talk about anger in and of itself. Before we get to the verse, is anger good? This is the thing that youth ministers always ask middle school kids, because that's what they're dealing with right now. Is anger good?
Can be.
It can be. And how can it be?
If you're angry towards something that's wrong, then it helps you do it. You know that it's wrong because you're angry, so that emotion tells you that this is something you need to think about.
What would you call that anger? Is there a term you have for it?
What they call righteous anger.
Righteous anger. Okay, we'll call it righteous anger. So anger can be, but it's not always, right? So let's hit. Let's go to Ephesians. Ephesians chapter 4, verse 26 through 27. And it says, this is the one I use every day on myself. Like I said, I have 4 siblings. We do not always get along. There is a definite one. I'm not trying to talk down about them. I love them to death. They're all wonderful people, but they're all single, and none of them have kids. And so I get made fun of a lot for being the old man who has to go to bed, has to, leave the party at 8 o'clock at night. And so even before I had my child, it was very much and I'm not talking down to them at all, but it's different, right? I kind of miss that. Well, I love my son, but I looked at my wife the other day and I was like, don't you, and this was pre-COVID, by the way, because you can't do this anymore anyway. I said, don't you miss just being able to, like, hey, let's go to Dallas for the weekend? Like, I love my son. I wouldn't give him up for the world, but I do miss the freedom I used to have. I miss being able to, like, even go to her parents live in Denver, like, just going to Denver. Everything has to be, like, planned to the nth degree now. Especially when he was a baby and I had to fill up the truck with all the accessories that go along. Now that he's 3, it's like we have a little bit less, but I've never hauled a packing place so many places in my life. And I was like, I don't know my dad doing this.
They did. You just get some pillows and put them on the floor.
That's what I thought. But again, I've grown. I'm starting to get smart about what is an argument worth having and what's not. What is an argument not worth having? So anyways, so this verse is very important to me. This is, be angry and do not sin. All right, right there. Can you be angry and not sin? So not all anger is sin. That's good. It's good to know on me. Have you guys ever watched that Pixar movie about the emotions? I forgot what it's called.
That's Inside Out.
Have you seen this movie? It's this movie. It's
a girl. It's a chick flick.
It's not. Trust me, it's not like Cinderella. It's pretty funny. But they show the inside of these people's brains, and they have different emotions, and there's anger and there's fear and there's I forget the girl's name, the green one.
Jealousy.
Is it jealousy? So they have all these different emotions, and so they show the main character girl. She's got like one of each, and then they show the dad, and it's like all 5 are anger. And or was that the bus driver? I don't remember. But anyways, that's kind of how I am, and I feel like that's very much me. And my wife poked me when we saw the movie, and I was like, "Thanks a lot." So be angry and do not sin. I feel good about that. Do not let the sun go down on your anger, and give no opportunity to the devil. What is the sun not going down on your anger? Is this literal?
Don't hold on to it.
Don't hold on to it?
Let it go.
Okay. So anger should probably have a time limit, right? Right? We shouldn't be holding that grudge. It's funny enough, I do take this verse literally. Like if I have a problem with somebody, I try to resolve it by the end of the day. Just because who I am as a person, I will stay up at night thinking about that. And so so to me, that's one of the times where this was inspired, and God knew that people were like me and crazy, and was like, let's just how we talk about how smart the Old Testament is with the don't eat pork because why? Because of the disease. To me, this is almost in the same vein. Like God knew that this would be the better way, so don't let the sun. So I take this as literal. I'm not saying everybody should, but I actually take it as literal of get your conflict, get your anger, get your problem sorted out that day, especially with the people close to you. And it says, give no opportunity to the devil. Why? Why does he mention give no opportunity to the devil? Would it have been sufficient just to say, be angry and do not sin? Why does he continue on with this, give no opportunity to the devil?
Once he gets in there, he doesn't stop.
Right?
Continue.
I think anger is talk about the 7 deadly sins, right? Or all the different emotions like greed we talked about. I wonder if anger is the easiest one for the devil to manipulate. because I think it's the easiest one for us to have. I think as humans, it says don't be quick to anger, right? In the new, I think actually Jesus said don't be quick to anger. I think as humans, I think there's a reason that's mentioned so many times. And I think when we talked about what Jesus said, like even if you're angry in your heart, like the Bible says, do not murder your brother. But Jesus says, even if you hate him in your heart, then you've basically done that, right? Jesus took it to the heart, and I'm wondering if anger is one of the easiest ways for the devil to get in there and start twisting things, right? It's easy for us to dwell when we feel like we're the victim in something. It's easy for us to change, even if we're not. Like, let's say if we hold on to the anger. For me, I see it twisting us almost to where our rationale, our how do you call it, our logic has shifted, right?
It's, I mean, I hate to bring politics into it.
You can, it's fine.
But these crazy people that are rioting, I mean, that's just pure anger for no good reason.
And see,
They've just gotten, and I want to go out and say to them, God loves you. This isn't all there is. But they're at the point where this is all there is. This is all I've got. It's this life right here. And they're angry about it because they feel like they were losing out on something. And I feel for them that they think this is all they have. That this life, this world that we're destroying is all they have. But it's not. I mean, it's far beyond. I mean, Satan's got a hold of them because it's far beyond just trying to improve things. It's force.
So you've opened up a Pandora's box of things, and we're going to hit it. So
it's one that's been on my mind.
It's fine. I am one of the most apolitical people you'll ever meet in your entire life. Don't tell my wife that; she'll disagree wholeheartedly. But around people who are not my wife, I don't discuss politics. So let's hit it from an apolitical, because I think your discussion here is an apolitical one.
Right.
It's not, to me, it's not politics. I'm going to remove two sects of people. I'm going to remove the protesters and I'm going to remove the rioters. Okay? So rioting, I think you've got your opportunists, right? We see this in every type of protest or riot we've ever had, Rodney King, whatever. People are going to see an opportunity and they're going to take advantage of it. Is that necessarily anger? Actually, I don't think it is. I think that's just opportunistic, and I think that's evil regardless, but I don't think that's anger. Am I making sense?
Right.
Okay, so let's talk about the protesters, people who are actually angry, right? Because I think the herd mentality, whatever. So we'll talk about the people who are angry. I think you're right in that if you take a long-term view of your life, and as Christians, what is our long-term? Which is eternity.
Yeah.
And this is the hardest thing to get into. I hate thinking in the realms of the infinite. People try to attribute stuff to God. I back away because I probably will never understand the way that God thinks. Mostly because I don't reside in an infinite, right? We talk about the omnis of God being this omnipresent, omnipotent, omnipowerful. He's got all the omnis. I am just singular. And I exist 24 hours a day, right? My day consists of waking up, doing some stuff, and then going to sleep, hopefully. And so for us as Christians, we try to think in that infinite, but I think we get caught up in the finite. And we have people who are angry and justifiably so, sometimes justifiably so, we'll say. I'm not saying these people are. I'm just saying when we have a lot of this anger, like we'll talk about is it Belarus right now where there's a lot of riot, or where is it? People are disappearing in black vans. We'll talk about those riots. I almost think that's justifiable to me. When your friends are disappearing in black vans because there was a bad election, we luckily don't have to have that problem a lot. We've had a good switch of power. But in Europe, there's not always that example. So we have a lot of Eastern Bloc. It's an Eastern Bloc country. I can't remember what it is, but it was basically just an election where it's happened in the Vietnam War, where more people voted than the actual population.
I like what's going on here.
Sort of.
They're trying.
But instead of, I'm gonna leave it. I'm gonna talk about Europe. And so we have these people who are angry, and how is the devil taking advantage of that? Because I see it on one end. I see it on the protesters where they do turn into rioting sometimes. Sometimes it's not two groups, right? Sometimes it is one evolving into the other. Like, I'm so angry, I just feel like I have to smash stuff. I have a 3-year-old that does that. He's not really good at the pause between I'm so angry and I'm gonna have to smash stuff. So then we get into we go right into the smash stuff, and then we get into the discipline. And so there is that. I always look at it from what is the correct response? Because I don't know, as Christians, how are we told to respond to that? And how are you seeing the response to that?
I mean, if it's just anger at the system, that's one thing. But if it's just anger,
For anger's sake?
yes, just to be mad, and once that starts, it's hard to control,
So let's see the response.
especially in a group.
Let's see the response to this. Has the response from all say quote unquote Christians, because I firmly believe everybody that says Lord, Lord is not going to be accepted. And I'm not trying to put myself on a pedestal. Don't get me wrong. But has the quote unquote Christian response to these things, has it been the way it should be?
I think it's been more of an eye for an eye than it has been to seek and, I mean, it'd be very dangerous to go walk out there and say, God loves you.
Yeah.
And this isn't all you have, but that's what I almost feel like they need.
Exactly.
But how to reach out to say that to somebody that's very angry is hard to do.
Mm-hmm.
So you got to find that one-on-one opportunity for somebody that's in that place.
Mm-hmm.
But then we live in Lubbock.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, where you find
We talked about the bubble, right?
those people that
Exactly. I find them a lot on Facebook. So again, moving all over the country, I have a lot of different friends, a lot of different lifestyles, a lot of different political leanings, and so I've just, and maybe I shouldn't be this way, but I've just kind of disengaged from social media altogether during since COVID hit at least. So I'm not saying my response is probably the wrong response, to bury my head in the sand and bury my talent. But I wonder, I keep seeing the response to this, and it seems to very much an anger for anger's sake, right? We get these people who are angry, and then we got these people who are angry at people for being angry. So now there's two parties who are angry, right? And I don't think that is the appropriate response. And so we can't control those people as much as we'd like to. We can only control ourselves, right? So how should we respond to those people in practical sense? You said one-on-one, right?
Yeah, it can't be in a group because
Okay.
it'd be dangerous.
Well, not just that, but a herd mentality is hard to beat, right?
Yeah.
Those what do we call it? The echo chamber, the bubble, the echo chamber. The echo chamber is hard to beat, right? You're not gonna change somebody's opinion on the internet.
No.
Right? It's gonna have to take this one-on-one, and then what emotion? So if somebody's angry at you, what are you gonna have to combat that with? Kind of already talked about it.
You just have to love them back.
You have to love them. You have to show them love. That's what we're commanded to do, right? We're commanded to love our neighbor, right? We're not commanded to go out on our front porch and point a gun at them. As much as, and I own a lot of firearms, but and it's not easy, is it? I think that's the number one thing is I think the way to follow God is to look at what's the difficult path, because God's way is the difficult way, right? It's easy to bury our talent. It's easy to respond anger with anger. I don't believe Barnabas and Paul were angry to the point of, again, we have this conflict here, and how did they resolve it? They didn't say, basically, I think what they did is agree to disagree. Is that an appropriate, is agree to disagree an appropriate response? I think so. As long as what?
As long as you're not family, you have to learn to get along. But
I
in
don't-
this case,
I disagree. In my family, I have learned to agree to disagree.
well,
Even my family, we run the gamut of political.
but you can't
Stuff.
you can't be separate. You have to be able to agree to disagree together.
Why?
Because we all get together every once in a while. We have to learn.
But why? Why?
So you can have a relationship and disagree with people.
So what I'm trying to get at is that if you're family, what's the end goal there? What is your reasoning? Why are you doing that? Because you love them? Okay. Because they're family, because you love them. And so we are commanded to do what? To love, right? And so we need to come at people from a place of love. Anger begets anger, right?
And I figure Mark and Paul, made up at some point.
We'll get into that. They did. Actually, Mark and Paul did do that, actually, and we'll get into that here in a second. Let me, where was it? I had it in my.
Because they're both in the same place, just different personalities where they didn't understand each other.
Right. I think that,
And if you have the same goal, that helps to dissipate the anger.
right. So we already talked about this. What was Paul's and Barnabas's goal?
To reach out to everybody.
Exactly. So even through their conflict, they accomplished their goal, right? And that's why I was trying to think about the family thing. You agree to disagree because why? What is your goal? Your goal is to get together. Your goal is to be a family. You're not always going to agree on everything. It's okay it's okay to disagree as long as your goal is what? I think as Christians we need to understand. I think as Christians it's okay that we don't agree with everybody as long as our goal is what?
Love one another.
Love one another. And what is the Great Commission we talked about last week? Because I feel like this is Sean Gary trying to get us to become evangelists. I really feel like that. And I feel like he's taking a different different path that I've seen it done traditionally, which is get a bunch of missionaries in here and talk to you. So in 1 Timothy, I think it's in 1 Timothy, we're going to talk about that resolution here. In 1 Timothy, it is in 2 Timothy, I'm sorry. Where are you, 2 Timothy? Chapter 4. Chapter 4, verse 11. Here we go. It says, only Luke is with me. Luke, obviously. He says, get Mark and bring him with you because he is helpful to me in my ministry. There you go. So, same guy. Paul's asking him to be brought to him. Paul's asking somebody Timothy to bring to Mark with him. So, did they resolve their issues? I think very much so. He said he was. Not only did he say bring him because I want to see him, he said bring him because he is helpful. Mark wasn't helpful before. Paul, I think that's one of the reasons Paul didn't want him. Mark wasn't helpful before. Now he sees him as helpful.
That's like bringing a teenager or somebody that's 25. I mean, it's not that much time between, but they grow up so quickly once they get to be more responsible.
Mm-hmm. So.
When he was in college.
Yeah, but I didn't know him.
A whole different kid.
So it's because we're talking about conflict resolution. Is conflict inevitable?
Yeah.
Is conflict inevitable? Right? Anybody with a brother or sister is going to tell you that it is, right? No matter how, like even twins. I have a lot of friends that are twins. Even those people argue, and they're supposed to be like almost the same person, right? How many of y'all know twins?
Cheryl's
I am.
nieces, they're twins and they fight all the time.
Is Nathan a twin?
No, I'm not.
Oh, but Nathan's not like, it's not like, I was wondering if Nathan was like her younger brother twin, like a couple seconds younger.
No.
Oh, okay. So you are a twin, okay. All right. Do you guys always get along?
No.
Is there some magic twin power
No,
that lets you always get along? No?
no, but because we're the same age, it makes us closer than anybody else,
I understand.
because we're the same age. Of course, we're completely different lives, but she'd be out with those postmasters if she wasn't married with kids, so.
I have a,
She's on the other side, but we just don't discuss it.
I talked about this last week. Can you be a hermit and be a Christian?
No.
No. One of the reasons I say is because what's the verse one? Is it 2 or more, or 3 or more gathered in my name? Is it 2 or more? Or 2 or more. So at least there's another person at the very least. So I mean, there I am with you. So God at least requires another person. So hermit, it's not really going to be worked out to be a Christian. So if you add other people to the mix, conflict is going to happen. So if conflict's going to happen, I think we're taught that we're going to have to figure out how to deal with it, right? We're going to have to figure out how to make God the goal through all this. I am the worst teacher about this conflict stuff in the entire country.
That's why you're teaching me.
Yeah, I guess so. Watch me. I keep saying I'm going to apply this stuff at home, and then I do it. So there was this guy. They give us an example of this dude, Ken Sandy or Sand. I don't know. He wrote a book called The Peacemaker, and he says the 4 G's of conflict resolution, and it says each G is designed to handle conflict in a way that would both honor God and be best for both parties involved. Jesus said we are blessed when we are the peacemakers. So let's take a minute. So here's the 4 G's. First is glorify God. We talked about this. 1 Corinthians 10:31. So whether you eat or drink or whatever you do all to the glory of God. So what are we supposed to do to the glory of God? Everything. There are a lot of weird examples that come to my brain. Like, I guess when I'm driving on Marcia Sharp going a little bit over the speed limit, I should probably be doing that to the glory of God, right? Probably. And what does that mean? If I'm driving to work to the glory of God, what am I doing?
Going the speed limit.
And we're not going to talk about speed limit. We're talking about the heart, right? So what am I doing?
You're not road raging.
Texas is a relative speed state, so the speed limit is relative, just like time.
Yeah, time is very relative.
So if we're supposed to be driving on, because this is my one thing with Lubbock. I always tell people like, oh, it's like living in Lubbock, because I go back to Indianapolis a lot. And they are the nicest people in the world until they get behind the wheel of a car. There's people like, hey, what happened to your Ford? I used to have a little Ford Focus when I moved here from Indianapolis. A little stick shift Ford Focus. Now I drive a Toyota Tundra.
Yeah.
And they're like, what happened to your Ford? I'm like, people couldn't see me.
I drive a convertible. I'm very curious.
Yeah. Both my wife and I own Focuses when we got here, and she now has a 4Runner and I have a Tundra, and it's because people couldn't see us. And so, tailgating, probably not driving to the glory of God. Right? I have never been tailgated so much in my life for going over the speed limit than I have in Lubbock. Yeah.
It's 3 lanes. Get out of my way.
So first one is do everything in the glory of God. 2, get the log out of your eye. How hard is this?
You always see things from your perspective
Right.
first.
So try to walk a mile in that person's shoes. The 3rd one is go and be reconciled. This one comes from Matthew chapter 5, verse 24. Leave your gift before the altar. Go and first be reconciled to your brother, and then come and offer your gift. So your first thing is not to offer. It's not about your offering to God. It is what your reconciliation with the people around you. And the 4th one is to me almost the hardest one, which is gently restore. And it comes from Galatians chapter 6, verse 1. Brothers, if anyone is caught in any transgression, you who are spiritual should restore him in a spirit of gentleness. Keep watch on yourself, lest you too be tempted. Spirit of gentleness. If we're right, how awesome does it feel that we're right?
That's always
And are we gentle in our correctness? Are we always gentle in our correctness, or always I told you so? How? And I don't have an answer for you, because this is the hardest one for me, because I'm right a lot. I have a very good long memory. I have a terrible short term, but my long term, I can remember almost everything I've ever done, which is not good. And that's where you say, thank goodness for grace. But how hard is it to gently restore somebody when you are correct? And you've known, like, let's say, I like to put this in this term. You have an argument with somebody. You knew you were right. Time goes by, and let's say a lot of time. They finally come to you and say, hey, you were right all along. How hard is it, especially if that time has been going, how hard is it to have that spirit of gentleness? And what does the spirit of gentleness look like?
Sometimes you just have to be quiet.
I tried to tell you I was right. You didn't listen to me.
Yeah.
Don't listen to me. You just have to be quiet and say, I'm glad you came to my side.
Yeah. So I knew you were going to get here eventually. That's how I feel like, what is it? This is going to out me. I'm not trying to be political, but my dad always, my grandfather used to always say this, everybody, as a teenager, everybody is liberal until they pay taxes.
Mm-hmm.
That's what my grandfather used to say. Everybody is liberal until they pay taxes.
Well, 50 cents.
He doesn't want to be 20 cents. Is that real? Is that a real? I saw that on, oh, okay. I didn't think that was real.
Yeah, he said that.
That's funny. And it's 50 cents.
Well, yeah, whatever.
It's 50. I'm the whitest person in the room, don't worry. I'm the whitest person, I'm clear.
That rap was long after I got out.
Yeah, I was in high school. Oh, it was a long time ago. And now going back to school with kids is fun. But anyways, so the spirit of gentleness, I think that's the hardest thing. I've always had a combative conflict within myself of does forgive mean to forget? And I don't have an answer for you. But anyway, so this week I don't really have any homework for you except for try to keep. Actually, no, I do have homework. We're going through a really contentious election. It's not going to be pretty. We all know that. So let's try to set that example of having that spirit of gentleness. Let's try to set that example of coming from a place where we're just trying to bring glory to God and not glory to whomever we decide should be our next president. All right? Questions, comments, concerns? Not going to be easy, is it?
No.
It's fun to be right, and we all think we're right, especially when it comes to politics. Like
Yes,
my dad always said, you can be right and still be wrong. And it's one of the main things I've always struggled with is trying to be not wrong and still be right. So anyways, I think that's all the time we have. I have to pick up my kid. Any prayer requests? I'm sorry, we forgot to hit that. You all right? Just COVID in general.
Yeah, COVID in general. My cat's good back for.
I'm going through a bank merger right now, and so this has been not a fun time. I'm the only guy on staff now. Everybody has left, and so I'm sailing the ship by myself.
That's fun.
On the accounting side of things with Centennial Bank. So Happy State Bank, I have 22 people in accounting there. I've got me. So I've got 22 bosses or people I'm trying to keep happy. Funny enough. But anyways.
So Centennial's closing or Happy?
Centennial.
They're going.
We are moving. So on November 9th, if you're a Happy State Bank customer, you can go to the 2 Centennial branches here and they'll be able to do it. November 9th is the day we're all Happy Bank after that.
There you go.
So.
And Happy Bank, they keep growing.
We were the biggest merger. We were the biggest acquisition they've ever had. We had assets of just under $1 billion.
Yeah.
And so now I think they wanted us. So now they're in the Hill Country now.
Oh, there you
Because
go.
as acquiring Centennial, they've acquired our Hill Country assets. And so now not only are they in the Panhandle, but now they're in Kerrville, Fredericksburg, Bernie, San Antonio, Austin, those places, and they're in Fort Worth now too.
So
They're growing.
they're putting up a map that shows people where Happy is.
Mm-hmm. They've got a map. It's on their website. It's gonna be
I
interesting.
have a cousin that got married in Happy.
Happy Texas?
Yeah. they
Really?
went up there and had it just.
That's the funny part is the Happy headquarters is in Amarillo.
Yeah, well, that's
They're in
not
Amarillo
surprising.
Bank.